I got my handy dandy notebook to try to keep me on topic for this video. But I'm gonna start out with 55 million people in the United States of America are unbanked or underbanked, which means that they do not have access to traditional banking services, which can be a problem in our society. That roughly translates to about 22% of US households. This includes and is mostly actual American citizens that do not have banking service. And that means really that they have to, and you've probably seen this if you've ever lived in like a poorer or kind of like the crappy side of town. You'll see a lot of people that work for all cash or deal with all cash. You see when they have to pay bills and other things like that, they have to use money orders. Want to send money to people, they have to use wires. So they have to use like MoneyGram or Western Union or something like that to send money over long distances. They have to use check cashing places when they get a paper check, or they have to, which all of those things mean a little bit higher fees, and it makes it harder to actually kind of live in this country. And in addition to that, they don't have access necessarily, unless they have a checking account, to things like PayPal or Venmo or other things. Makes it kind of difficult. And a lot of these people, it's for specific reasons. They either only make cash or they have income limitations. A lot of government services, they issue their own cards, so you can technically live like with the Social Security card that they give you, but it limits you to being able to save money on it. You have to spend everything on the card roughly every month. And if you have a little bit of a balance carry over, if it eventually gets too large, you lose benefits on SSI, or you're on SSDI, or you're on unemployment or something like that, and you can't make above a certain income level, or else you're technically considered employed because of the level of earned income that you're making. But with those things, there aren't really as big of asset caps on stuff. So it's either that or you have no ID. You don't have your birth certificate. And why would you have no ID or birth certificate other than that you either don't believe in them or you lost them and you don't have a residence or a place to store them, which is what I'm going to get into next. There's a lot of homeless people that are unbanked. There's a lot of homeless people inside of this country, and it isn't just crazy people or drug addicts that are homeless. The majority of homeless people in this country are structurally homeless. Property values are high. They lose their house. They can't get an apartment. They don't have savings. They aren't able to put down the deposit to get an apartment. Or they're socially disconnected from services and charities that will provide services or maybe get them emergency housing or shelter or other things like that, which would give them an address to be able to get their ID mailed to them, or have an address on file to get a government ID, or to get their birth certificate shipped to them, or to get a replacement Social Security card, or to have an address on file to be able to use to start a bank account. Now, I'm going to give you three options, basically. These are ways that you can deal with being unbanked inside of this country. I'm going to cover the center option, which is what finance bros and financial people are going to tell you to do. It is the on the books kind of above the table, like everything's documented and everything's regulated and there's more insurances and protections and stuff with this. Better services that are market determined rather than like individual, like private markets where value is a little bit more subjective and based on how much people are willing to spend on something rather than how much something is worth determined by market forces and other things like that. So your option is to get a bank account, which in order to do that, you need to get a house or you need to have an address on file that you can have your mail shipped to at least. And the only way to really do that is to either have a friend, have a family member, use their address as a place to get your mail and then go and collect your mail, or network with somebody inside of your community. Most charities will, at least, I don't know, I think more Catholic charities like the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, Catholic workers' houses, other things like that, will generally let you use their address as a place to ship your mail. Other charities will allow you to do that. If not, you can get involved with homeless advocacy organizations to try to figure out a way to get an address technically, even if you don't have shelter, so you can start doing things officially and get the documentation that you need to integrate back into society. If not, go to a church, talk to the pastor, talk to the parish priest, and start networking within the church. Enter into the church, become a part of the congregation, and start networking with them so that you can eventually have social and community-based supports and people. There'll be some grandma in the parish that will be like, yeah, you can send your mail here, that's fine. And you go over and they just enjoy the company of getting to talk to somebody or something like that, or some old widow or some old dude or somebody that is guided out of the kindness of their heart. And as long as you don't abuse it, they're gonna keep being a decent person, allowing you to use things. They might even give you shelter for the most part, so you don't have to use homeless shelters. Although I would recommend homeless shelters because there's more accessibility, and day shelters because there's more accessibility to outside services. The other thing that you can do is, if you don't have a phone or a device, you can use public libraries. They might ask for an address. They're generally more understanding of things rather than sending you bills for late fees and stuff like that and charging you for services and stuff. Generally, they're free now, and they kind of create an account within the library system where, associated with your card, it charges you stuff. Sometimes they need a phone number because they like to send notifications and stuff about things like when your books are due or what's late or what's available if you put things on a wait list. But you can always get a burner phone to do that. You go to the store, you buy a burner phone, you buy minutes and data. Very simple. Phone's probably the easiest thing to get a hold of. But anyway, you're gonna want to get a bank account. You got to do what you have to do to get a bank account in the center route. And what I would recommend is credit unions or mutual savings banks. They generally try to keep fees down. If they make any excess money, they generally give it back to the members of the bank by like maybe a dividend check or something else like that. There's a lot of credit unions that are available locally to people. There's a lot of credit unions that are based on certain membership characteristics and stuff like that. But I've always used credit unions, and I consider them to be a better alternative because they operate on a not-for-profit or non-profit basis. They use any profits that they make through charging fees and getting interest on loans and other things that they issue to try to drive down the cost of the fees and the cost of doing business. And they use it primarily to provide services to people rather than with aggressive growth in mind for their business organization. So they're not trying to extract the most amount of money out of people. They're only extracting as much as is necessary to cover the operation of their institution. Now, the other two options that I'm going to give you are the more right-wing option to being unbanked and the more left-wing option to being unbanked. So the right-wing option is to go all assets, go hard in the paint. You're based on titles in the court system. You might be all cash. You might do jobs that are all cash. You're avoiding taxable things as much as possible. You're misreporting things on paperwork or other things like that. Or you're buying assets that generally appreciate, but don't really generate as much paperwork, 1099s or other things like that when you sell them because they have a slightly more liquid market. Although some of them, it's above the table and you have to deal with it as you do. So with the right-wing option, your assets are tools, equity inside of businesses or business partnerships where you're working with somebody else to try to make money for yourself, and it's basically shared between both of y'all. And there are ways technically around having to start an LLC, and LLC is the easiest way, but it is above the table to get liability insurance. But at the very least, you're going to have at least a DBA filing to get insurance, to not have to file with the Secretary of State inside of your state, to have an LLC. and you can just kind of plausibly deny stuff. They could be like, how did you buy this car? It was gifted to me. I don't know. You can deny it. But that's more of like the libertarian and right-leaning thing, or even like the Christian thing of like where you don't want to use money. You don't want money to be your God. That's totally understandable to me because I like political extremes and I like alternatives to things, and I like trying to present people alternative ways to get ahead inside of life with their finances and being able to live. Because not everything is about money, not everything is about the hustle and the grind. A lot of stuff is about finding your own path to your own success in whatever way seems appealing. Now, the right-wing thing is going to be all assets. Tools, cars, which are slightly depreciating, but if you buy a bunch of clunkers and you trade them for parts, you chop them up for parts, you get good deals on them. It's about your ability to negotiate for the assets like cars and other things like that. There's bullion, which is you're going all gold, all silver, all palladium, copper. There's a lot of different bullion options that generally have a liquid market for their sales, but you have to go through coin dealers and other people to sell that stuff. And they, of course, give you a little bit less than what the market or spot value or melt value of the coin happens to be. You can do finished goods. You can just acquire a bunch of things. You can have a bunch of ammunition. You can have a bunch of things that do have a resale value that you can sell on the private market through Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, or just through networking with people. Car boot sales, flea markets. There's great options to doing things like that. Flea markets, the extent of what you have to do is pay money to the person that operates the flea market, but you can really run your business. You can run a retail business basically under the table for the most part with minimum regulations, and they're really popular in areas that have large immigrant populations, specifically undocumented immigrants, because you can go do something other than just showing up to a Lowe's parking lot and having to go to a construction site or trying to find an immigration sponsor and working a crappy job in like a hotel or something like that. Instead, you have the option to kind of work for yourself and do your own thing and sell things that you've built your own network of supplies and other things like that. And you don't really have to report anything. You just kind of sell it. You can close up shop at any time, move your wares somewhere else, open up shop at another flea market. You can also use farmers markets and other things like that. If you're growing produce or if you have chickens, like my family does, you can sell eggs, finished products, soaps, vegetables, bread. You can make food, you can make bread. You can do a lot of things and just operate at farmers markets, and you pay an upfront fee to cover what should be your estimated sales taxes, but you don't have to actually incur the documentation necessary to file your sales taxes and pay your sales taxes that you're collecting from customers to the state that you live in. But those are some options. And there's also cryptocurrency for like the crypto bros and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that even though the blockchain exists, it exists outside of the traditional banking network, and it is a banking alternative. You take the risk of whatever goes on with the crypto market. You could go all Bitcoin or other things like that and be sitting there and be looking at like, oh, I got $100,000 in Bitcoin and it's pretty liquid because I can just sell it for stable coins or trade it up for other things and do whatever with it, and then it drops to 50,000 that you have in your account without even spending anything because some whales or the Bogdanov twins from the dead are coming back to influence the crypto markets, or perhaps even the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers or the Freemasons are in the background sitting there manipulating the crypto market, or Larry Fink, I don't know. That sort of stuff. Those are the narratives that are being pushed by that to try to explain basic market function for a global 24/7 marketplace. And a lot of people that got into crypto were never aware of Forex trading, which is like that all the time with like retarded ways. Now, the left-wing options for being unbanked are you can use mutual aid, you can use like anarchist organizations and other things like that. Like info shops, community centers, social centers. random things like that, organizations that are based on mutual or cooperative organization. So anything that is based on cooperative economics or mutual aid or anti-capitalist tendencies. You have freeganism, you have people trying to repurpose things and upcycle things and take trash and repurpose it and other things like that. That is an option available to people. So you can still have assets, or you can still have accessibility to food, shelter, other things like that. You just have to kind of voluntarily adhere to the rules of the organization that is going out and acquiring these things for the benefit of everybody inside of the organization. Now, the alternatives all require a personal support network of some sorts. You have to have a community that you have connections to. You can't really do things outside of the community. It's a little bit hard without engaging in the gray market or the black market, which is also always an option. But I'm not advocating that, because obviously YouTube will ban this video if I tell you to go out and start engaging in some salacious things or some ethically dubious things. But if you're willing to take on that burden on your soul of doing that, go ahead. That's your problem. I'm going to tell you to not do it though, because the risk of law enforcement and other things like that. Everything else is arguable on this list with law enforcement and with the courts, but those things are not arguable. Plus, there's ethical considerations. But you have to have personal support networks or a market function or collaborative communities that you can use. Now, there's a lot of collaborative communities out there. You don't have to pay for Microsoft or other things like that to be able to actually run an office job or do IT stuff, freelance work in the tech industry, and pay all the fees for software as a service and other products that happen to be offered by a bunch of companies. There's a lot of things with Debian, BSD, Linux-based things, free and open source software or freeware that you can use. You can always buy cheap electronics or find people that are getting rid of things and repurpose it and try to do your own thing with that, which is always an option. I would recommend Louis Rossmann and a lot of, Luke Smith, I believe that's what his name is. Luke Smith's earlier videos on Linux tutorials and other things to learn how to use free software if you're more technically inclined, so that you can kind of do your own thing within tech without necessarily engaging in the major corporations and the stuff that is in the mainstream internet. Now, the center option is finding a way to employment or stable income, having an address and place in the community, and a place to store your documents, at least safely, and your assets and things. You need official documentation and ID, and it enables you to use better financial products than the rest of the stuff. Pretty stable things. You're integrated into the economy, you're doing the right things, you're playing by the rules of the game, and you're benefiting from it. And a lot of those financial products, you don't have to use the unbanked things like MoneyGram wires, check cashing, payday or title loans, pawn shops, or money orders to get money or to trade things and have a little bit more liquidity to your funds, and you're not getting nickel and dimed by the fees or selling yourself short with what your actual economic potential is. And it'll give you access to more market-driven prices for products like lines of credit. You get the general deals that everybody gets for going with lines of credit, credit cards, and other things like that, the promotional offers, which can be good and you can exploit in various ways. There's a lot of people that have made videos on using like arbitrage between credit cards, using balance transfers to 0% APR cards in order to pay things off without having to pay interest. You get access to CDs, mutual funds, stocks, bonds, ETFs, retirement accounts. Typically banks offer free checking, and you have market-oriented prices instead of people trying to scalp you for the things that you have because you aren't integrated in the system. But those are your options if you're unbanked. I hope this video was helpful. And anyway, y'all have a good day. Bye.